Lots to talk about today.
Yeah, a few things. It's Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. Zohran Mamdani. By the way, I just want to say that here on the show, we nailed his victory, the numbers. We said 52.
Yeah, we did.
51.5 is the current count. So
kudos to us.
If you don't like the show, you should probably refer to us if you're an online bettor.
Seriously, we called it.
Yeah,
we called it. Yeah, we called it everywhere. And this was not just kind of an interesting off-year election. This was a landslide nationwide. If you look, for example, at Virginia, the Democrats picked up 10 state house seats. They already controlled the state house. They picked up 10 more. 3 are still too close to call, all held by Republicans. They could pick up as many as 13. In Pennsylvania, there were 3 elections for state Supreme Court. The Supreme Court justices in Pennsylvania are elected to 10-year terms. Democrats won every seat. So the Democrats now control the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, one of the important battleground states. Last year, we saw a Democrat win the deciding Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. So this is happening. In California, where Republicans spent $100 million to try to defeat this referendum calling for redistricting so that the Democrats could try to offset some of the Republican redistricting efforts in Florida, Texas, Ohio, North Carolina, Indiana, and Missouri. 63.8% supported redistricting. That was a monumental landslide. I'll tell you, if I were the Republicans, I would be gravely worried today. But with that said, you cannot run with your sole campaign slogan being vote for me because I'm not the other guy. The Democrats have to come up with ideas. And so far, they have no ideas. I will say, I've taken a couple of swipes at Abby Spanberger. And I mentioned yesterday, Abby and I worked together in the CIA's Counterterrorism Center. She ran as a moderate, a right of center Democrat, a conservative Democrat. Mm-hmm. But then in her post-election victory speech last night, she said all the right things. And man, I hope for the sake of having a viable Democratic Party that they listen to what she said. She said she is going to immediately sponsor constitutional amendments to guarantee a woman's right to an abortion. She's going to, there was another constitutional amendment that it was like going to the very, to recognize in perpetuity same-sex marriages. And her first bill that she's going to propose to the legislature is to guarantee a $15 minimum wage plus paid leave for women who have just had children, parental leave, whatever it's called, none of which has ever been done in Virginia before. And there's going to be something about, I forget what, handgun registration or something like that, which will probably fail. But anyway, real ideas for a change. Instead of, vote for me because I'm not Donald Trump. Now, much to the Republicans' chagrin today in Virginia, State Senator Jay Jones defeated the heavily favored Republican Attorney General Jason Miyares. Jay Jones, on October the 22nd, which was less than 2 weeks ago, somebody leaked text messages that he had sent to a friend in 2022 talking about shooting Republicans in the head. Now, of course, this is something Republicans have done time and time again. But this time, of course, they completely lose their shit because a Democrat did it. And nobody cared. Everybody said, there's going to be a lot of ticket splitting. People are going to vote for Abby, and then they're going to vote for Miyares, the Republican Attorney General. That didn't happen. Miyares has been a terrific attorney general. And it's hard for me to say that about a conservative Republican, but he has been an excellent attorney general. And he was just unceremoniously thrown out last night for Jay Jones. Now we'll see what Jay Jones does in this position.
I mean, John, have you ever seen a one-party sweep in not even an off-year election, but an off-year election like this? I can't remember one. I mean,
not like this.
You can't really read a lot of tea leaves out of an election like this.
There was even a Republican in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is, it's an old South kind of, Civil War era, pre-Civil War era town. Very, very Republican. Their state representative was elected in 1988.
Oh.
And he lost last night to a 20-something-year-old Democrat.
So
1988, Ted.
But I agree with you 100 million %, John, about this. Democrats have to have an idea besides Trump sucks. Yeah. What we're seeing, I think this is just something Democrats should not take a lot of comfort in. What we're seeing is every election now is a change election because Americans are pissed across the board for different reasons.
They are.
They're all pissed. And so two-party system, they're just going to keep flailing and voting against the incumbents over
that's
and
it.
over.
And that's bad for the country. We need real ideas, people who are going to stand up for something, not just pandering so that they can get elected next time. That's exactly what's wrong with this country.
Totally. John, got to read an ad. Did you know the biggest threat to your retirement is not something that's talked about often? Our increased longevity in America means default retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks, and TSPs may not suffice. If you have over $100,000 in your retirement account, get instant access to a free 2-minute report from Augusta Precious Metals that reveals the one step you can take to secure your financial future. Text SAFE to 35052 today, 35052. Anyway.
Good.
Little housekeeping too about just want to encourage people, just a reminder, we're trying to get our producer back, Robbie West, who got doxxed and is leaving his job to come work for us full time. We need your support to help do that. John and I are each going to be shaking out the sofa cushions to pay out of our own pockets, but it's not going to be enough. So if we want this show to work and you want Robbie to help us make it succeed, so he behind the scenes, he creates clips, he promotes it, he does metadata, he works with Rumble when there's a problem, with our pay or whatever. He's the guy who handles all the tech stuff behind. We're calling it Robbie Aid. Please reach out directly and send the money to him. We're asking for $1,000 a month total from across the big world. So that we feel like that's not asking too much, but we'll see. The URL is givesendgo.com/West Glacier Gaming. I'll leave the URL up there. This is we got to, first of all, I just want to say, we kept saying, about billionaires like the Gristides grocery guy with the long name.
John Katsimatidis.
That's easy for you to say.
So long, John.
Yeah, you're all afraid of New York. Like this morning on my Facebook feed, a lot of my Zionist friends are saying, like New York, we hardly knew ye. My right wing friends on X are posting images of a plane hitting the World Trade Center and saying, how could you have voted for a Muslim after what happened?
Yeah, because he did it. He did 9/11.
If you guys are genuinely this scared, then you need to leave.
Yeah.
Or you need, and if
or
you
join
don't
the
leave,
military.
You need to be quiet because you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Because if you're really that scared, you shouldn't stick around. New Jersey will be happy to have you. Oh wait. They went Democratic. Pennsylvania will be happy to have you. Oh, wait, they went Democratic. Keep going. Go to Ohio. Hang out with J.D. Vance when he's not making out with the widow.
Yes, exactly. Hey, do you mind if I answer a couple of questions?
Please, let's do it.
One is, what's my reaction to John Brennan's interaction with Thomas Special at George Mason University on the 30th? I'm not exaggerating when I tell you at least a dozen friends of mine sent me the video. And I watched it at least a half a dozen times with Brennan physically poking him in the chest, which, by the way, is assault. But that's beside the point. I've known John Brennan for 35 years. That's the first time I've ever seen him scared. I think he's genuinely scared of what's going to happen to him. You know, the drain is open, and I think the water is starting to circle. So, yeah, I'm glad I'm not John Brennan today. Somebody also asked me if I had seen the mass shooting in Crete, the Greek island of Crete. And I was smiling because being Greek, every Greek knows about Crete. Everybody's armed and everybody's pissed off at somebody else. It's just the nature of being Cretan. It's like they're like Sicilians, very much like Sicilians. In fact, it was the ancient Cretans.
That's how Corsicans are in France.
Yes, that's right. That's how Corsicans are. It's the same thing. If you look at me cross-eyed, or you insulted my sister, or you cut my dad off in traffic and didn't say you're sorry, blood feud. And it'll go for generations. So what happened was one of these feuds bubbled over, and guy started shooting and killed a whole bunch of people from the other family. So it's not a terrorist attack. It's just Cretans being Cretans. And even the prime minister, who is Cretan, by the way, he's like, look, we have to stop this silliness. Every time you get mad, you just go get your 100-year-old Ottoman rifle and start shooting people you don't like. You can't do that. One other question from Nicholas Francos. John, why is it that we cannot pronounce the name of the redheaded devil, although her name is out there? You know, I got burned thanks to the Intelligence Identities Protection Act of 1982. So I don't pronounce her name because I don't say her name. I don't say her name because I don't think she deserves the media attention. She who must not be named. She's a war criminal. She's a genocidal, example of everything that is wrong with the CIA. Her name is out there.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I just don't want to say it.
No need at all.
But sorry, I didn't mean to pull us off of politics, Ted.
No, that's quite all right. Listen, I suspect chicanery, not in the Mamdani win, but do you really believe that Andrew Cuomo did as well as they claim?
No.
And that Curtis Sliwa did as poorly?
No. I do not. And listen, I don't care how conservative Staten Island is. I don't think he won Staten Island as big as everybody says he did.
That's Curtis Sliwa territory.
Yeah, it's Curtis Sliwa territory. They're all Republicans on Staten Island. Why in the world would they vote for Cuomo? And did you see what Mamdani said in his victory speech about Cuomo? I wish Mr. Cuomo the best of luck in private life, but I hope to never utter his name again.
That's great.
Ouch.
Well, yeah, I mean, Andrew Cuomo did not really conduct an honorable campaign.
No, he didn't.
It was an
Islamophobic campaign
beneath him and his family name. It was sad and tragic to watch. Obviously, if the system manipulated the vote at all, obviously they couldn't take it away from Mamdani. The win was too big. It's a landslide for people. I just want to keep reminding people, this was a 3 or 4 person race. This was so when you get over 50% of the vote in a 3-4 person race, it's a landslide. You kicked ass. The day before the vote, Cuomo's at 24%, and now suddenly he's at 42. Really?
Come on.
Picked up 17%. That's after Trump endorsed him, by the way. And that only could have hurt him in New York City, in something that Cuomo knew, because he said, no, I'm good. I don't need it. And then even Trump was like, no, I'm not really. It's okay. It was just speaking out of turn. And then Sliwa, I mean, the only thing that would explain it to me would be if Sliwa's supporters saw that he was going to be, washed out. They're like, I'm not going to bother to wait in these long lines. This was record turnout, 2 million votes in a city of just shy of 8 million people, in an off-year election. I mean, and one of the ballot initiatives, John, was, I don't know how, by the way, I have to look up how this did. One of the there were 8 initiatives yesterday, and one of them was in New York City. Should we move the mayoral race to a presidential election year because nobody votes in the off-year mayoral election?
They set a record yesterday. Yeah, they set a record. It was a record turnout. It was double the number of votes that turned out for Eric Adams' election 4 years ago.
That's correct. Yeah.
Double.
And this was you have to go back to Mayor John Lindsay of the 1960s.
Wow, yeah.
To find similar numbers. Now, you might say, the population of the city is bigger now. Actually, the population of the city is a little smaller. So that's not really true.
So I wanted to ask you, too, if you don't mind. Mamdani's biggest vote tallies were, of course, in Queens, parts of Queens and Manhattan. So what was up with the Bronx? I mean, I guess I get Brooklyn, but Brooklyn is actually more ethnically mixed and racially mixed than Manhattan is. So why were his numbers so strong in Manhattan and in far western Queens than they were in areas that I would just have assumed that he would run up the numbers?
Well, I haven't had a chance to study the precinct by precinct results, which the New York Times just published right before we went on the air. And I'm going to look at that because I always find those fascinating. But certainly the Bronx overall, first of all, a big section of the Northwest Bronx is Riverdale.
Right, that's true. It's white, yeah.
And then there's also a lot of Latinos, right? And Latinos often are small c conservative, right? Or big C conservative. Yeah. So I'm suspecting, but AOC does okay there, but that's because she
went mainstream.
And also she's Latina. I mean, there's former Bronx Borough President Jose Ferrer runs a political machine up there in the Bronx, and I suspect that his thumb is on this. And I do think some things change. I mean, I think the system decided to give Cuomo a more dignified loss on the record just because. I mean, I know this is conspiratorial thinking and it's speculation and I have no evidence for it, but it doesn't seem right. You hit the Mamdani, all the polling hits Mamdani right on the nose, but not, Cuomo suddenly kicks major ass. I mean, he lost by a lot less than we expected. So
have you had a chance? I looked and I couldn't find it easily, so I just moved on to something else. Have you had a chance to look at the lower level races in New Jersey? I have no idea what happened to New Jersey in the legislature.
I haven't had a chance to look there, but it does look like a Democratic sweep. It's a repudiation, I think, of Trump's style. And I think if I had 10 minutes with President Trump, I would say, listen. I care about the country, so I want you to succeed. If you succeed, we succeed, and I believe that.
I do too.
And I would say you've taken out you've fallen for a typical second-term presidential mistake, which is you're finding satisfaction in foreign policy, and you took your eye off the ball of why you're president. You ran on domestic issues, you ran on the economy, and you've basically, aside from the tariffs, haven't really done anything about the economy, and the tariffs are a mixed bag, to say the least, right? And people are still, the things that you identified correctly about high prices and low wages are still, if anything, getting worse. And people see you, sending money to fucking Argentina,
right,
and not here. So
right.
I think this is partly that repudiation. People don't like the ICE shit. Even people who are anti-illegal immigration, they don't like the way this is being handled. The goons on the streets of the city, the National Guard.
I went downtown yesterday afternoon to have coffee with a friend, And there were 2 National Guardsmen in the Farragut West metro station. Farragut West, probably the single safest metro station in the entire metro network. And I, as soon as I saw them at a distance, I was like, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything. And I walked up to them and I said, you guys should be ashamed of yourselves. And I walked away. They didn't say anything. That's all I said. Yeah, they didn't respond at all. Hey, and I wanted to say, this is apropos of nothing, but I thought people would get a kick out of it. When I was on Rogan a couple of weeks ago, we somehow got onto the topic of AI. And I said, I didn't like ChatGPT because it lied about me. And it just made up that I went to the University of Maryland and to some grad school in Belgium that I've never heard of. And I told ChatGPT, you're wrong. And it says, no, you're wrong. Right. And so I told this story to Rogan, and Rogan says, oh, we use Perplexity here. They are advertisers on the show, but for our own use here at the studio, we use Perplexity. And I said, I'm going to start using Perplexity. Last night, around like 10 o'clock, the CEO of Perplexity sent me an email with a lifetime subscription to Perplexity. He said, thank you for the conversation you had about Perplexity. Here's a link for Perplexity employees. It's a free lifetime subscription to Perplexity.
That's great. I love that.
So now I'm going to be all about Perplexity.
I'll have to check out Perplexity. I'm like, as you know, I'm banned on ChatGPT.
Yes.
My personal account is banned. I'm not allowed to access. If you type in my name, it's literally like a 1960s Star Trek episode where the robot says, does not compute.
Ridiculous.
Literally.
Ridiculous.
Try it if you don't believe me. And it all started because same thing. They made up lies about me. Like, oh, this they took away my Pulitzer Prize. I never won a Pulitzer Prize. Don't have it to give up. This crazy literary feud I supposedly had with Scott Stantis.
What?
We're best friends. We've never had an argument in our lives. It's just bizarre.
Oh my God.
And it just makes shit up. It's they call it hallucinating.
Yeah.
It's not hallucinating.
No,
it's
just lying. It's just lying.
It's like hallucinating.
Yeah. Ridiculous. Well, now it's going to be Perplexity.
Yeah, Vicky in Greece is asking. Why am I banned? So I wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal about it, and the title, which I didn't write, was "ChatGPT libeled me. Should I sue?" And and after that, I got banned. So that's
jerks. Oh my God.
So let's see. Bob Channel says he uses Copilot. It makes a lot of mistakes.
I don't know that one. I have one in my doc that's called Comet. I don't know. Is that Perplexity? I think Perplexity's Perplexity. Anyway, I'm going to download it today. I'll let you know how it goes.
What Cole Laubach wants to know, what do we think about Giuliani saying New Yorkers have forgotten about 9/11?
Giuliani's so drunk by 12 o'clock noon, he's already forgotten what he did yesterday. So honestly, whatever Giuliani has to say, I dismiss it as the rantings of a crazy person. Sorry, I'm a little bit bitter about Giuliani.
Well, he's a dick. I mean, anybody who doesn't believe seriously, watch Borat 2. I mean, he's a major creeper. And
he's got his hand down his pants because he thinks he's going to.
He's so gross.
16-year-old.
Phil 2082 has been kind of like semi-trolling the feed, but I figure we can address this. He said, do we honestly believe the leftist garbage Mamdani is pushing will somehow magically not result in millions murdered? Earlier in the feed, he was arguing that communism inherently will result in millions of people being killed.
Yeah, but Mamdani's not a communist.
That's true.
This is what I so
He's
many of my
not even
friends.
A socialist, really.
Not really.
He's just a liberal.
He's a democratic socialist, which is really just a traditional liberal, a 60s
it's
liberal.
Hubert Humphrey. It's John Lindsay. I mean, what's happened here, right? Like, so what's kind of interesting, and this might explain what happened to Sliwa, is that the two parties have shifted so far over to the right over the last 60, 70 years that now in at least the New York mayoral election, what you really have is Mamdani, who's basically John Lindsay in the 1960s, running against Andrew Cuomo, who's basically a Republican from the 1960s, like a silk stocking Upper East Side Republican politically. And then Sliwa is somewhere where, I don't know, the John Birch Society would not have been elected, right?
Well, is he that conservative?
Well, he's affiliated kind of with MAGA world now.
Okay.
What is mainstream Republicanism now would have been off the charts. Like Barry Goldwater would have been like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah, I believe it. Even near the end of his own lifetime, Goldwater was coming around. Yeah. Goldwater, I had very deep respect for Barry Goldwater. When his granddaughter came out to him, he became one of the greatest champions of gay rights on Capitol Hill. Incredible.
Well, and it's not early. I mean, as Scott Stantis, by the way, who's going to be filling in for you tomorrow to co-host.
Oh, thank you.
Here, just for one day, he always likes to quote Goldwater saying, like, I don't care if the guy in the foxhole in the foxhole next to me is straight. I care if he can shoot straight.
I remember that. And he was a major general? Barry Goldwater in the reserves?
He was true?
He was either a brigadier general or a major general in the Army Reserves.
No idea. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. So was Jimmy Stewart, the actor. He was a brigadier general.
Real says ChatGPT angers me. I wish I could find AI that isn't so mainstream.
I know, right?
I like
exactly.
Grok. I use it all the time.
I haven't used it yet, but I've read other people, commenting about using it.
By the way, I want to stand up for communism here. I don't think that calling for equal income and wealth inherently results in having to kill millions of people.
Right. Yeah.
Agreed. Mean, that certainly has happened, and I think that had very little to do with wealth redistribution, and a lot more to do with the authoritarian form of government that was sort of using communism as a cover, like Mao and Stalin. I mean, yeah. Stalin didn't kill all those people to redistribute wealth. Some of them, but not most. This was about control.
Yeah, it was about control. Yes.
In that sense, I don't think the economic system inherently results, but I think every system results in, control. The need to control your fellow human beings necessitates leaders thinking that they have to kill some of their fellow citizens.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Let's see. Oh, Phil 2082 said, yesterday we both talked about getting EMDR therapy for PTSD. The current VA wait time for veterans for that is 12 months.
Are you kidding me?
I can't get it after 3 wars, Phil says.
Oh my God. I'll tell you what, my insurance wouldn't cover it at the time. So I paid for it out of pocket, and it was $700. And
yeah, my recommendation, Phil, obviously we don't know your financial situation, but here's the thing. You don't need a lot of sessions to get some big fucking results.
No, I had like 4 sessions and I was good to go.
3.
See?
Yeah. And one's like a prep session. So you might just need 4 or 5.
I actually fell asleep in the first one. I got so relaxed. Yeah.
Man, I cried so much. I mean, and I don't really cry, I'm one of those people I can't cry even when I want to. And then it's I just disintegrated.
Oh.
It was great.
See, my problem is murderous rage. If I can back off from the murderous rage, then I'm okay.
Oh, Frasmataz wants to know I guess we should not use jargon.
Oh, sorry.
So EMDR basically is based, you might have heard of tapping, but basically it's based on this theory that it's just sort of we don't really know why it works, but we know that it works. Mm-hmm. And basically it's kind of like a form of gentle hypnosis.
Mm-hmm. That's why I fell asleep.
Basically you're with a therapist, you sit across from them, and they wave usually they wave a stick around, and you stare at it, and you're asked to go back to the thing that traumatized you, and how you felt and what happened, and the person will prompt you with some cues, and we'll just sort of walk you through, try to take you back to that. And it's very weird. It's like a primitive response thing. It's sort of like when you pet the back of a cat right before its tail. It can't help but arch up. They just do.
Yeah.
It's sort of like your brain just sort of responds to it that way. I recommend looking it up. It's too complicated.
I agree. And I mentioned I did that transcranial magnetic therapy, where you just put this it's this band of magnets around your head, and you have to wet these two gauzy contact points right here, and it's attached to a battery, and you turn it on. You have to have it on for 20 minutes. For the first minute, it makes your eyes go completely blurry, like you're shaking a TV and watching the TV as it's shaking, that kind of thing. And then it stops, and then you just take it off after 20 minutes. And I did that for a few weeks, worked like a charm.
There's also these
really great
these wristbands that you can buy that they pulse on your wrist, and they're like $100. Frasmataz just wants to, and this is important. I don't understand how you can do EMDR if you're not a combat or otherwise physical PTSD patient. How do you get EMDR about your divorce? Anyway, that's personal. Don't need to know. I think it's important. Look, you can get trauma. The short answer is you can get trauma over all sorts of things that are not physical. In my case, I did have PTSD over not my own personal combat, but having been in a war in Afghanistan as a journalist, and seeing a colleague of mine die, and I was diagnosed with that, right? Abusive childhood, which can involve physical abuse, but anyway. Basically, psychologists are very clear. There's really kind of not much difference in the effect between physical and emotional and psychological abuse. I mean, the effect is kind of the same. I mean, forget the kinda. It is the same. There's no difference.
It is. It's the same. That's right.
Whether if your parent yelled at you, screamed at you all throughout your childhood, and they never laid a hand on you, it's no different than if they had.
That's really. Right. That's right. I want to thank Zohran too for his generosity, and he had a question here that I just saw. Oh, I see. Am I ever going to be on the Rogan show with Mike Baker? Probably not. Probably not. The truth is, I have a manager now who is, she also represents, well, I won't say who she represents. She represents some really high level people. And she told me that I'm more highly sought after than Mike Baker is. So why legitimize Mike Baker? And speaking about Bustamante too, Bustamante is included in the question. Rogan will not have Bustamante on the show, period. It will never happen. He and his people were crystal clear about that. There will be no Bustamante on that show. He's not a person who is taken seriously.
Well, while we're on the topic of covert shit, should we talk about Exxon?
Yeah, let's talk about Exxon. Bastards.
So this is a crazy story. It reminds me a little bit of the story of the attorney who ended up being sent to prison and subject to house arrest for winning a huge $1.5 billion damage award in favor of indigenous people down in Bolivia against ExxonMobil. Stephen Donziger, my neighbor in Manhattan. Yeah. Anyway, in fact, I was thinking maybe I'm going to reach out to him and see if he can come on the show.
That would be great.
Talk about this. But anyway, so it turns out there's basically Exxon throughout the late 90s and throughout the aughts was bankrolling the Atlas Network, which is a think tank down in Latin America, basically doing Spanish translations of climate denial propaganda, like stuff by Fred Singer, who's against the Kyoto Accord, and basically it was meant to undermine the scientific consensus that the planet is going through rapid human-caused climate change, average global warming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which is really the simplest science in the world. Like if you ever seen how a terrarium works, it's like third grade science. There's not that much to it. And it used to be mainstream until Ronald Reagan decided to politicize climate change and the environment overall. So long story short, this is kind of like how big tobacco used to operate, paying scientists to say that cigarettes weren't dangerous or not that dangerous or whatever. So this all just came out. The Guardian broke the story. It's really gross. And it's like very revealing that like a lot of the bullshit that's out there, kind of like, people felt it was legitimate because they read stuff that sounded and felt real, as if it was from real, intelligent, qualified intellectuals and scientists. Yep. But it was all bullshit.
Yeah.
How do we? I mean, is there anything we can do as a society to hold companies accountable for this kind of propaganda?
No, not when the Supreme Court repeatedly sides with the companies. I mean, look at the precedents. There are no good cases to point to. The little guy always loses. It's like a Stephen King novel that the good guy always loses. Terrible, just terrible. Steven Donziger is the clearest example of this. The guy is a freedom fighter. Talk about the savior of the little guy, the indigenous people of what was it, Ecuador?
I think it was
Bolivia, and an administrative judge sentenced him to prison. Ended up being house arrest, but still, the big polluting, filthy, killing corporations always get away with it. And they're going to keep getting away with it until somebody finally stands up. Somebody in a position of authority finally stands up and says, enough of this.
Well, they have billions of dollars, and billions of dollars can always buy congressmen and presidents. And
yes.
That's the thing. When people say take the money out of politics, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what did it was Citizens United. I mean, I'm sure we all agree. I'm actually very sure we all agree on Citizens United. Corporations are not people, and corporations should not be able to donate literally unlimited amounts of money to political candidates. It just completely corrupts the system.
Yeah, no, for sure. And other countries definitely know how to handle that.
Yeah. I like Donziger. He was on the show that Michelle and I had several times. He would be great on this show. We should have him soon.
By the way, do we have any thoughts about this? This is a curveball, so I apologize if you didn't look at it. Any thoughts about that UPS plane crash in Kentucky?
I think it was just one of those things. They're saying now 7 dead and like 11.
9.
Oh, is it 9 now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those things. Awful.
Yeah, we'll have to dig into it. Yeah, I mean, people don't really spend. We don't really think about how many of those, jets are, have no windows. They're UPS, they're FedEx.
There's cargo.
A lot of cargo in the skies, right? And not to mention the passenger planes are also carrying mail.
I think I mentioned to you one time I had to fly from Seattle to Nome, Alaska with Gary Johnson. And it was a big, like a 767. I was like, what? They have that many people flying to Nome, Alaska from Seattle to warrant a 767? I mean, you take those to Europe and back. Well, it turned out there were only like 20 seats on the plane, all in the back. And all of the rest of the plane was cargo. Everything was cargo.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
We should talk. I do want to I do want to like not let go about. I do want a little thing about the mayoral election and all the elections yesterday. I mean, we're now about to see, and this was the thumbnail today, right? A war in the Democratic Party, right?
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, wouldn't the right thing to do, the smart thing for the DNC, be to say, listen, we have multiple approaches. During Occupy Wall Street, we used to say like different tactics for different situations. Democratic socialism. Look, is that a model that can be replicated everywhere? No, but can it be replicated for the mayor of Los Angeles and San Francisco? Sure.
Right. You bet.
Or Chicago or Boston? Sure. Miami, maybe. And it's like similarly, but so we're being told like, well, we're already seeing efforts to marginalize Mamdani and say he's a quantum singularity. New York City's different. It's not like the rest of the country. I remember always thinking when people would say like, that must be very strange to live in New York City. It's so different. And I would say, more people live in New York City than anywhere else. So actually, it's not that strange if you think about it. And like far fewer people live in small towns. And so I was, so I'm just thinking, that's going to be their talking point. New York is weird. That's them. But, clearly what the Democrats nationally are doing hasn't been working.
Right.
So I don't know. It'll just be interesting. We know the war is afoot. And,
see, and you and I both know that the Democrats don't have the foggiest idea what they're doing, right? So is this going to be the party of Abigail Spanberger, or is it going to be the party of Zohran Mamdani, or is it going to be something in the middle, or are the Democrats just going to throw up their hands again and say, oh, we don't know what to do, but you should vote for us because we're not the other guy?
Yeah.
I don't trust them. I don't trust any of them. And even if the right thing to do is to make the party more in line with Zohran Mamdani and his positions, I'm just saying, what's to keep the DNC leadership from just stealing the next presidential nomination from somebody who is more in line with Zohran Mamdani than with Abigail Spanberger? I don't trust them. We need multiple parties in this country, just like we used to have. As recently as 100 years ago, there were legitimate, viable parties. Even in the 1968 election, George Wallace won, 6, 7, 8 states?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need third parties, several of them.
I like this. Yeah, we do. Freud6624 is asking over on YouTube if we're seeing a growing presence of more radical positions in younger people, particularly Gen Z, both right and left.
It's a good question.
It's a great question. I think we're certainly seeing greater radicalization across the board. Young people always tend to have more extreme opinions anyway, but I mean, the right has been really true. Young right wingers have been really radicalized by the internet in the last 10 years.
Yes.
And I think the same thing's been true. I mean, yeah, I think the short answer is yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's also because we're in a pre-revolutionary moment,
Yeah. I wonder what Robbie would say about that, because he's young and he's very right wing.
He's not as young as you think, though. He looks.
Really?
How old do you think he is?
I just assumed he was about 30.
He's 48, yo.
What?
I know.
Robbie, kudos to you, man.
Clean living.
Wow. That's that pure air up there in Montana.
Yeah,
wow.
It's
okay.
Crazy. Oh, my God. Prasmataz says Mamdani promised not to appoint a new police commissioner. Max Blumenthal made a good point that the NYPD is a state within a state, and its commissioner has a usually tight relationship with Israel. That is true.
That is true. And Max Blumenthal, he hit that nail right on the head. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Fire Sig. Using the term radical is ridiculous. How about that Gen Z is seeing things for what the environment represents? Yeah, they're fatalistic, man. They know they've been handled a shitty fucking, hand.
My son and I, my third son and I, have had this conversation 100 times. I'm going to go see him in a few days. We're going to have this conversation even more. How does somebody in this generation afford a first home, for example, unless you want to. Yeah, it's not possible unless you want to live out in the sticks somewhere. You can't. Like he knows that he will never again live in Arlington, Virginia. It's not possible. I remember when I got back from Pakistan, I had so much money from overtime and danger pay and language differential and post differential and per diem. I bought a house. A little one. It was 1,200 square feet on 3 floors. That's how small it was. And I still remember, I paid $347 for it, $347,000. I sold it 2 years later for $721, and now it's $1 million. A 1,200 square foot house, $1 million. And I remember my ex and I at the time marveled over this Washington Post article that, and this was, like I say, 20 years ago, that Arlington had sold its first $1 million house. And I said, can you imagine that? $1 million for a house. It's just insane. Okay, not too long ago, 20 years. Well, now the average home price in Arlington is $2 million. And that's every house, the average. And in my neighborhood, which is no nicer than any other neighborhood, it's just a normal, middle class, middle neighborhood. The average is 3.2 million. I can't afford to live here. I have 2 housemates and we live in a townhouse. Otherwise, I could never hope to live here. What about my kids? My kids grew up here. And they'll never, ever be able to live in a place like this. Something's got to be done. Otherwise, we're headed for an economic catastrophe where an entire generation is cut out.
Yeah, I think we're already there. By the way, Village Idiot has a really good point here regarding third parties. Regional parties, successful, healthy regional parties, like the old Democratic Farmer Labor Party in the upper Midwest. And conservative versions too. And there were others historically. There was like the City Party in Philadelphia and stuff like that.
Yes.
That's a good point. All, it's a really good point. It's more viable, right? I mean, you can start locally and then try to expand regionally, but you get a foot in the door.
Yeah. Village Idiot says, a house, who cares? What's your local school look like? No one cares. Privatize. Your hospital, no one cares. Privatize. Transport, private. Wake up. It's different in Arlington. The schools are absolutely magnificent, which is why we moved here in the first place. It was before we had children, but we wanted our children to have access to Arlington County schools. The hospital, they've saved my life more than once. I mean that quite literally. Although it is likely private. Transport is not only public in Arlington, it was free for 5 years from COVID onward. And now they just implemented a flat $1 fee. You can go anywhere in Arlington County, $1. So it's unusual here. And this is a place that's very, very, where people are very successful financially, but they voted 77% for Barack Obama. So.
Yeah. Crazy.
What are you seeing?
I'm looking at, sorry. What am I? I'm looking at the chat. Phil2882 says, whether underground is 40 plus years ago, it's all Antifa now, and it's just the name for everyone pushing out more terrorism. I think that's bullshit propaganda, to be honest. I mean, there's just Antifa hardly exists.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm not a believer that Antifa even is a thing. I mean, people can put a mask on and call themselves Antifa, but it's not, you can't like join Antifa. It just doesn't exist.
No.
As an organization.
That would be totally right. All right, so let's talk a bit about Sean Duffy. He's the Secretary of Transportation. Mm-hmm. He says that if the government shutdown continues next week, starting roughly Tuesday, he's anticipating having to shut down swaths of airspace over the United States due to a lack of air traffic controllers. He says there's 3,000 controllers short, and they have already mass chaos, he describes it, at big airports like JFK and Newark, and right across the river from New York City, where already the lines are getting really long. TSA is short staffed. People are quitting or just sort of doing sick outs. And he's saying that like there's going to be a meltdown well before Thanksgiving, major travel weekend. That's a major problem. Is he bullshitting, or is this just the Trump administration trying to pressure Democrats?
No, I think he's being serious. I flew in from Spain a couple of days ago. Sunday, and the lines getting through security were ridiculous. I passed them as I was leaving, but I mean, there just weren't enough TSA people processing travelers through security, number one. But when I was coming in through immigration, I filled out it's called MPC, the mobile whatever.
Yeah.
On your phone.
I have that thing too.
Yeah. I don't know why everybody doesn't do that, because
it's great.
There's never a line. You just blow right through. So anyway, the immigration guy is just sitting like this, and he goes, "Look at the camera. Welcome home." And I just walk past, and I'm in. That's it. It's like, wow. It's because he's not getting paid, so he doesn't give a shit.
What a country.
I think this is bad. We're headed for something bad. Last night at midnight.
It's not even like we're broke. It's not even like we're like Mali and our national resources rocks.
Right. There's plenty of money.
We're just choosing not to use it, like the SNAP stuff.
Yeah.
We got the money. We just don't want to use it.
We don't want to use it. Last night at midnight, this became the longest shutdown in American history.
Yes.
And there's no end in sight. None.
No, and I do think it's really important. I talked a little bit about this on TMI yesterday, but I think it's really important to understand for the Democrats, this is existential. Republicans don't understand it, right? Like, if Democrats sign the continuing resolution now, then the Republicans are totally lying when they say, "Oh, we'll talk about subsidies for Obamacare." No, they won't.
No,
they won't sign it.
No.
And then next year, not only Obamacare collapses because that's propping up the entire system. By the way, it'll drag down private insurance too, because Obamacare subsidizes the private insurance sector too for people who have like quote unquote normal jobs at big corporations and stuff. So the whole healthcare system tumbles off a cliff, right? Which probably would benefit Democrats, but to their credit, they don't want that. But it would be denying them their only major legislative achievement in 30 years, right? So literally they would have nothing to say. What's the last thing you guys did? NAFTA? Oh, don't want to be bragging about that. Welfare reform? Don't want to be bragging about that. The crime bill under Biden and Clinton in the night? Don't want to be bragging about that. You have to go back to like Jimmy Carter. He has no major legislative achievement. You have to go back to like the war on poverty to find a major Democratic legislative achievement. So, they can't let this go. It's literally like, you're not even a party anymore if they let it go.
It's all they have. It's literally the legacy of the modern Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And if they lose it, they have nothing. You're right.
And I'm not a fan of the ACA. I think it sucks.
No, nor am I. I'm telling you, because I live it. It sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, but the thing is, it's one of those things that, like, as shitty as it is, it's only going to get worse. Craig D. Vance is asking, where does funding for ICE come from? It just comes from the federal budget.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Phil is insisting about Antifa. They have cells and international cooperation. No. The people just putting on masks also call themselves this. All right. Well, if that's true, can we see some evidence, please?
Yeah, please lay it out. I'm perfectly happy to change my position.
Me too.
If I see the evidence.
Me too. Nicholas Francos is asking, what is the Conservative Party of New York?
That's a good question.
So
is it a legit party still?
Not really. It's sort of like, I mean, if you look at New York City, New York State actually has, there's Working Families Party, which is a left-leaning party, and there's the Conservative Party, which is self-evident. And basically, when you go to vote, the line for the working families is almost identical to the line for the Democrats. They just cut and paste the name of the Democrat over to working families.
Yeah.
If I vote for a Democrat, I will vote for the working families line just so that it supports them. But the truth is, it's a shell. It's a husk. And then over on the same thing on the conservative side, the Conservative Party tends not to have its own candidates.
Oh, really? So they just take whatever the Republicans do, and
it's
a shame.
It is a shame. Yeah, it's not really real.
I remember the 1980 Senate race in New York when Jacob Javits was suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease, but decided to run for re-election in a crazy Republican year. He was a liberal Republican. He lost the Republican nomination to Al D'Amato, but he still stayed on the ballot as the Liberal Party candidate. So he split the vote with the Democrat, and New York was cursed with Al D'Amato for like 3 terms.
Yeah. Al D'Amato. God, I remember him very well. But he was the pothole senator.
Oh, yeah.
He was.
That's how he kept getting reelected.
He believed in that shit, which, not wrong.
Right.
Trying to think if there's any last minute stuff we have to talk about. We're going to have a lot more data on the election tomorrow. So it'll be, here we go. Jonathan Morris says the Working Families is basically the Warren wing of the New York City Democratic Party, except that they hardly have any of their own candidates.
That's a shame. That's a shame because they know they're going to make it onto the ballot. And so that's 80% of the battle right there. Take yourself seriously.
Seems like a waste.
Mm-hmm.
I think, the vibe I get is that basically they are, they're planning to just do, it's like a placeholder. We're going to become a real party soon, but we're not really ready right now. We're like next time, but we'll just keep the ballot access. We'll just use the Democratic thing. And then they're out to brunch. And that's how it is every single time.
Yeah. What a waste.
It is.
What a waste.
Well, John, you're going to be out tomorrow.
Yes, I'm going to be out, but I'll be back the day after.
We'll see you again on Friday. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We are here Monday through Friday. That is Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Please, please, please go over to this. Apparently only works in the United States. GiveSendGo.com/West Glacier Gaming. That's how you're going to help us keep Robbie on the show. We'll keep you up to date. Sort of provide a thermometer about how much money we have so far and how close we are to our $1,000 per month goal here. It's still the beginning of the month, but we'd like to get this out of the way so we can stop talking about it and just do the show. Robbie's due to be back with us a week from Monday, so we're looking forward to that. He's doing his 2-week final notice. John, good luck tomorrow.
Thanks, buddy.
And looking forward to seeing you again on Friday. Scott Stantis will be joining and sitting in the John seat, trying to fill his big shoes. Please stay tuned for the TMI show with Ted Rall and Manila Chan coming up right after this. Thanks, everybody, and take care. Bye, John.